From creating fantasy cities to expert mind control techniques, here are 8 creepy and strange facts about Disney. Number 8. Celebration, Florida. Way before any 3D city building computer game was cool, it was hard to make your own little town you could control yourself. Unless you owned Disney, of course. Disney's fantasy was to create his own world, a new magic kingdom for real people. He unfortunately died in '66, but the idea of the perfect fantasy town he had didn't. In early 1990, the town of Celebration in Florida was built. It was meant to be the perfect town where everything was by the book. And they did that in a very specific way. They must have snow at Christmas time, even if it's fake since it's never going to snow in Florida. Christmas trees with plastic needles, a lot of other Christmas stuff since Disney loves Christmas, a limited number of houses to keep the neighborhood organized, and a very strict set of rules. For some people, this was the ideal place to live. Clean parks and streets, the grass is always cut, the bushes are all in nice shapes, the houses are perfect, and it's family-oriented, like Pleasantville. It was indeed the Disney dream. But like with any utopian dream, in less than 2 decades, things turned south. People began to realize that the fantasy they were living was nothing more than a lie when the first murder took place. Life wasn't Disney, and they weren't living in a Disney movie, and there was nothing magical about it. It was all just a perfect shell to hide the real, normal challenges of everyday life. Not long after the murder, another resident named Craig Fauci barricaded himself inside his home. A SWAT team arrived and opened fire. After more than 10 hours, they used tear gas to enter the house, only to find out that the owner was already dead by his own hand. Disney sold most of its stake in Celebration in 2004, but the fantasy they wanted was a lie from the very beginning. Number 7. Death is not allowed at Disneyland. Disneyland, with or without real skulls, I'll get back to that later, is a great place for a family to have fun. It's the happiest place on earth, right? This reputation isn't easy to maintain, I'm sure, but how far would Disney go to keep this impression up? There are rumors about an unwritten policy that requires Disneyland staff to never let anyone die there. This doesn't make any sense at first glance. There are lots of reports about deaths at Disney parks. For example, an 18-year-old staff member was crushed by a malfunctioning stage in 1974. A plane crash killed 2 people in 1984, and the list goes on and on. But it seems that no death was declared at Disneyland. The theory claims that the staff is instructed to keep any wounded person alive until they are off of Disney property. They would even attempt to revive obviously deceased people in order to postpone declaring them dead. But how far from the truth is this theory? Pretty far away, actually. The facts are that paramedics won't stop trying to save a life until they reach a hospital. The only time a paramedic is allowed to declare a person dead is under extreme circumstances where the survival of the patient would be impossible. And people have been declared dead in at least 3 incidents at Disney. Number 6. The Wonderful Wizard of Bras. Oh, Disneyland, the theme park everyone knows and loves and where every child wants to go. Who can blame them? After all, any child would want to meet Mickey and Minnie Mouse, take a photo with Alice, explore Sleeping Beauty Castle, or get a racy bra and corset. Yes, you heard right. Back in 1955, when Disneyland first opened, you could, among all the usual attractions and souvenir shops, go buy some lingerie. At the shop, you could find out about the history of undergarments and even buy corsets and bras in the corseteria part of the shop. The entire lingerie store was hosted by a robot. Not any kind of robot, though, the Wonderful Wizard of Bras robot. It was placed on a revolving stage, which was a mechanically controlled platform, and it would move around and spew out a recording describing the items displayed. What else could you get here? Just the usual stuff. Some mannequins whose outer clothing would disappear, revealing their lingerie as you turn your head, a Singer sewing machine, which was a huge success, and some 3D boxes showcasing intimate apparel of the Victorian era. Shocking. Well, this store might have actually been extremely successful, except that people taking their children to Disney don't usually want to have to explain what Mary Poppins undergarments looked like. Pretty risque, especially for the 1950s. If you like the sound of the shop, then you should know before booking any tickets to Disneyland, the intimate apparel shop was closed in January of 1956. Sorry to disappoint. I wonder where the bra robot is now. Number 5. Human remains. An Imagineer is a person responsible for creating, designing, and constructing the Disney theme parks. Apparently, there are urban legends among Imagineers that some things in the Disney world aren't as fake as we'd like them to be. We're not talking about horses or machines, but actual skulls, human skulls. That's right, apparently Walt Disney took realism a bit too far with the last ride he supervised, Pirates of the Caribbean. The story goes like this. In 1967, Disney spent about $15 million, the equivalent of $106 million in today's money, on building this ride. It was great. So great that Walt Disney himself was especially happy with everything except, you guessed it, the fake skeletons. They just looked fake. They then did what everyone would have done, acquired some real skeletons. As time passed and the fake skeletons got better, a later generation of Imagineers decided to dump the idea of using real and very creepy skeletons. The poor real pieces were returned to their country of origin and given a proper burial, or so they said. Officially, Disney never stated when the skeletons were replaced with dummies, and apparently they only removed most of them. They claim that some parts of the real skeletons are still out there. We have no idea what the truth really is, but if you want to find out, just put your detective hat on and get a ride to Disneyland. And now for a conspiracy theory about the movie Up. But first, remember to subscribe for the latest videos. Number 4. Carl from Up is dead. Up is about an old man named Carl Fredrickson that sells balloons for a living. He decides to fulfill his lifelong dream of exploring South America by tying 1,000 balloons to his house. With the help of a Boy Scout, he flies away and they have tons of adventures, and of course, it ends well. There is a theory out there that asks a really interesting question about the movie. But what if this was just a dream? This theory states that obviously flying a house with a bunch of balloons isn't really a thing in real life. Duh. So what if the movie doesn't take place in real life? What if Carl died at the very beginning of the movie and his adventure represents his journey through the afterlife? That might sound a little bit crazy, but wait, there's more. Everything in the movie might translate to something else. The raising of the house represents, according to this theory, the initial transition from our world to the spiritual world. Russell, the Boy Scout, is Carl's guardian angel or some kind of spiritual guide. Kevin the bird represents something of a higher status, maybe God itself. The dog, Doug, is the representation of the Enlightenment, something that switches sides from evil to good. The house is Carl's attachment to the physical world, and Paradise Falls is his representation of heaven. I don't know, it all depends on how much secret meaning and symbolism you think the writers gave to the script. Number 3. The Disney look. How many Disney staff members were allowed to grow a mustache before 2000? Only one, Walt Disney himself. Why, you ask? The answer is simple, because of the Disney dress code for staff members, excluding, of course, Walt Disney. The dress code has been around since the first Disney park opened back in 1971, known from that moment on as the Disney look. Back then, Disney employees were not allowed to have visible tattoos, no more than 1 ring per hand, and undergarments had to be worn at all times. No wigs were allowed, and all hair color had to be uniform. No frosted or streaked hair, no eyeshadow, eyeliner, or false eyelashes. Fingernails had to be shorter than 1/4 of an inch. Earrings and perfume were out as well. For men, the hair had to be shorter than 1 inch, they had to avoid long sideburns, and of course, beards, mustaches, or toupees were not allowed. In time, the dress code was changed a little. The first big change was made in the year 2000 when men were finally allowed to grow mustaches. Then, from 2010, women didn't have to wear pantyhose with skirts anymore, and men could wear untucked casual shirts. The most recent update of the very specific dress code Disney has was made in 2012 when they decided to allow men to have beards and goatees. Number 2. There's a secret Disneyland under Disneyland. If you've ever been to Disneyland in Florida, you might have missed something maybe as big as the entire theme park. I'm talking about an entire network of tunnels located under Magic Kingdom, known as the Utilidors. There you can find offices, cafeterias, an impressive wardrobe department, and, if and only if you're lucky, a half-dressed Mickey Mouse flirting with Alice. Disney had the idea of building this tunnel network after he completed Disneyland, California. He didn't like the idea of a cowboy crossing a sci-fi themed Tomorrowland to reach his post. So he learned from his mistakes and decided his next park would be better. He bought an enormous slice of land in Florida and built a new park with tunnels underneath. Or so he wanted to, but even for a millionaire, life can be tricky sometimes. The swampy conditions made digging tunnels a pretty impossible thing to do, so he built the tunnels at ground level and then covered them with 8 million cubic yards of earth. The park itself was built on the second and third floors with just a little incline. You can even take a tour of the tunnels for about $80. It's pretty restricted, so you don't get to see too much, but it's a very interesting thing to see how much effort it takes to keep magic alive on your next trip to Florida's Disneyland. You can thank me later. Number 1. Mind control. There are several ways Disney tricks your mind into believing something that isn't real or buying something you don't need. For example, the temperature. In California, they made sure the street is always hot, so they keep people either moving or finding shelter at the closest souvenir or ice cream shop. On the other hand, you can often find very powerful air conditioning in shops where sweatshirts are for sale. Even if it's really hot outside, clients might forget about the heat because of the AC and buy those cute Minnie Mouse sweatshirts. Although the air conditioning is always full blast everywhere in Florida. Another example is the forced perspective used all around Disney World. The taller the building gets, the smaller the bricks actually are. Everything is made to create the illusion of enormous buildings or structures. They even went so far with these psychological mind tricks that they created a color to keep the people away from places they shouldn't be. It's called Go Away Green, and it is used everywhere around Disneyland to help visitors ignore specific things. The fences, some background buildings, the wall around the park, and the entrance to the now well-known Club 33 are all painted in Go Away Green. They are also taking advantage of other senses like smell. They use scent generators called smellitzers to make sure you smell exactly what they want you to smell. That is why every ice cream shop in Disneyland smells like vanilla, or the main entrance smells like popcorn because you can buy it right there. Or the haunted mansion that smells dusty, and the list goes on and on. So you tell me, are they masters at marketing or masters at mind control? Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you've done the secret Disney tour and what your experience was like. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!